I was leading a Zoom call with 6 engineers, 3 product owners, and a VP who still didn't know how to unmute himself when the intern asked if I could approve her PTO. I laughed and said, "You'll need to ask HR, I'm just a contractor." The room went silent for half a beat, then back to normal like the moment never happened. But it stuck in my head like a splinter under a nail. That same week, I was assigned to lead Q4 launch planning across departments. Not asked, assigned. No one ever questioned if I had the authority. I had a company badge, a corporate email, an invite to the leadership offsite, which I politely declined because I don't drink with people who misclassify me. I was expected to lead, deliver, manage other full-time employees. But on paper, I was a line item on the contractor budget, filed somewhere between freelance designer and AI chatbot consultant. They gave me a performance bonus last year, a $75 Amazon gift card for the holidays, a 401k match, and health insurance under a third-party shell, but still, HR would sometimes accidentally CC me on employee-only threads, then follow up with a whoops. Ignore that, like they'd just sent a cat meme to the CEO. I ignored it all. For 6 years. Because the money was good, and Ohio winters are long, and I needed to keep my health plan while taking care of my dad after his stroke. I know, if you're shaking your head thinking, Nina, why'd you put up with that? Trust me, I did too. Every day I clicked join meeting. But you learn to trade clarity for survival. Oh, and while you're here, quick pause. If you're enjoying the story, do me a favor. Tap that subscribe button and throw us a like. 90% of folks listen without subscribing, and it seriously keeps the team going stronger than HR's denial emails. All right, back to the mess. There were moments I'd forget I was other. Like when we shipped a nightmare project for a pharmaceutical client and my manager, Jason, said during the all hands, couldn't have done it without Nina Castillo. She's the glue. I smiled in my little Zoom square, said nothing. The glue doesn't talk, it just holds. But every now and then, I'd be reminded. Like the time HR sent out an email about the annual company retreat, team building, escape rooms, zip lines, and I clicked on the RSVP link only to be met with, "You are not authorized to access this form." I forwarded it to HR with a just FYI. They replied, "Sorry, that invite was for employees. Period. No emoji. No, we appreciate you." Just a cold, digital slap. Yet I kept showing up. Because rent doesn't care about your employment status. Because the health insurance was buried in that sketchy middleman contract, but it covered Dad's prescriptions. Because sometimes, when you're deep enough in the fog, pretending it's daylight feels easier than admitting you're lost. I stopped keeping track of my hours years ago. They were long. That's all I remember. Sometimes I'd sign off at 11 p.m. and be back in a kickoff call by 7 a.m. Slack pings never stopped. My calendar looked like a game of Tetris played by a caffeinated raccoon. But I got things done. My teams hit every deadline. Even Jason would occasionally send me a late-night message that said, "Not sure how you do it. You're a machine." I wasn't. I was just exhausted. But I had my little corner of control. I ran my projects like a conductor in a storm, tight, fast, no wasted motion. I never brought up the fact that I hadn't had a real vacation in 4 years, or that I was onboarding new hires who got laptops before I did, or that when I tried to expense a $29 software license, it was flagged because contractors can't submit reimbursements. Still, I stayed, because part of me believed I'd eventually be converted, that they'd finally say, "You know what, Nina? Let's make this official." That all my late nights, my leadership, my loyalty, it would count. That someone would notice. They did, just not the way I expected. The calendar invite said quick catch-up HR, which is corporate for your dignity ends here. I already knew. They always come smiling like clowns before a funeral. Marla, the HR director with teeth too white for a woman that dead inside, was already waiting in the conference room, flanked by a junior rep who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Probably thought she was shadowing a benefits call, not a hit job. "Nina, thank you for making time," Marla said, her voice coated in vanilla frosting and Botox sincerity. "I want to start by acknowledging your contributions. You've been instrumental, truly. But as you know, with budget realignment, we've had to make some tough decisions." I stared at the laminated conference room table. There was a faint coffee ring someone tried to wipe but didn't quite finish. Looked like a halo, maybe for my ghost. Marla continued, reading from a script like she was auditioning for an off-Broadway play called The Severance Monologues. "And unfortunately, today will be your final day with us. We're concluding the contract effective immediately." My contract. The fiction we all agreed to live inside, now weaponized to vanish me. I waited, then she said it, smiling like she was handing me a coupon for a free car wash. "And Nina, we're doing you a favor by not contesting your unemployment. Not all contractors get that grace." Favor. That word scraped against my spine like rusted wire. I smiled. The kind of smile you learn after years of pretending your soul doesn't have teeth. "That's very generous, thank you." Inside, something split. They handed me a manila envelope like it contained a blessing instead of the bureaucratic death certificate of 6 years of service. No goodbye lunch. No exit interview. Just the sweet stink of HR perfume and that junior rep silently chewing the inside of her cheek. "Do you have any questions?" Marla asked, stacking her papers like she had brunch plans. Oh, just one, I said, standing. Should I forward my performance reviews to unemployment, or are they also considered confidential? Her eyebrows twitched just barely. We'd prefer you not share internal documents, but do what feels right. What felt right? Leaving without flipping the table. That felt right, for now. The walk to the elevator was absurd. I passed coworkers who didn't know yet. My badge still worked. I got a "Hey Nina" from someone on finance. I waved back. The elevator opened. I stepped in. Alone. As the doors closed, I looked at my reflection in the brushed metal. I expected to feel grief, maybe relief. But all I saw was a woman who had been used and who had let it happen. In the parking garage, I sat in my car for 30 minutes, watching emails pile into my inbox. Termination confirmation, exit checklist, a feedback survey. They wanted feedback. I lit a stale breath mint from the glove box like it was a cigarette and sucked the bitterness through my teeth. I remembered Jason's voice 2 months ago. We're lucky to have you, Nina. I remembered onboarding 2 new hires last quarter, actual employees with less experience than my left pinky. I remembered Marla's email last year asking me to update the welcome kit because you know our process best. And I remembered what that lawyer friend of mine, Kendra, said over cocktails once. She worked for the state tax board. We joked about job titles. She said the moment a contractor starts getting benefits and reporting to a manager, that's a tax crime waiting to happen. That night, I pulled out my old onboarding packet, the one from 6 years ago. I'd kept it, out of habit or paranoia or both. It was labeled Independent Contractor Agreement, but stapled inside was a printed screenshot of the internal directory, my name listed under Project Leadership, right under Jason's. I flipped through old emails, found the one congratulating me on hitting Employee of the Quarter even though, I wasn't technically one. The 401k enrollment form, my health insurance plan confirmation, the Slack threads where I was called team lead, the annual review where I was rated a top performer. Favor, that's when it happened. A switch flipped, not like rage, more like clarity. The kind that shows up right before a thunderstorm and makes everything smell like metal and regret. They thought they were letting me go. What they'd done was let me off the leash. The first thing I did when I got home was pour a glass of wine, not because I needed to relax, because I needed something in my hand besides the urge to drive back and slap that smug favor off Marla's face. The second thing I did was open the hallway closet, dig through a box labeled Taxes 1822, and pull out the accordion folder I hadn't touched since Dad's last hospital stay. It was dusty, full of half-forgotten paper cuts, and buried between old receipts from Home Depot and an expired flu shot voucher was my onboarding packet. 6 years old, printed on cheap paper that curled at the corners like it was embarrassed to still exist. Independent Contractor Agreement, it read in bold at the top. But on page 3, right there next to my scrawled signature, was the section titled Optional Benefits Enrollment. It listed health insurance, dental, vision, and a 401k plan with matching contributions, all of which I had enrolled in, all of which I had received. That was the first crack. And I opened my laptop and searched org chart, and sure enough, there I was. Project lead, Nina Castillo. The chart was dated last quarter. I was listed between 2 salaried team managers and below me 5 full-time employees. Employees I had recruited, trained, assigned projects to, conducted one-on-ones with. My inbox was full of their vacation approvals, HR questions, and performance issues I'd helped solve. I had screenshots of Slack threads where Jason said, "Run it by Nina, she's your lead." I started collecting. Pay stubs with company logos, emails that began with "as a full-time leader," performance reviews where I was called a critical member of the leadership team, a photo of me at last year's leadership summit, smiling, holding a coffee cup that said "best team ever," a mug I had to return because, I wasn't technically staff. My desktop looked like a conspiracy board, documents, PDFs, screenshots, all labeled, tagged, and time-stamped. I renamed the folder Favor received. Then I called Kendra. She picked up on the second ring, chewing something loud. "Nina, what's up?" "Quick question," I said. "Hypothetically, what happens if a company gives a contractor full benefits, 401k matching, assigns them direct reports, includes them in org charts, and fires them claiming they were never actually an employee?" There was silence on the line, followed by a long, slow chew. "Hypothetically," she said, "that's called willful misclassification. The IRS and state tax board don't like that. You're talking payroll tax evasion, benefit fraud, possible labor violations. Depending on how many people they've done this to, that's not a slap on the wrist. That's subpoenas and back taxes with a side of panic attacks." I let that sink in. "And if they knowingly gave those benefits while keeping the contractor label?" She whistled. "That's called intent. Means it wasn't an accident. Means they chose the cheaper way and hoped no one called them on it." I didn't say anything. Just stared at the folder glowing on my desktop. "Nina," she said gently, "do you want me to walk you through how to file a whistleblower tip?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I'm just collecting," because I wasn't ready to burn the place down. Not yet, but I'd lit the match. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying every meeting where I'd been praised, every email where I was told I was essential, Every time I picked up someone else's slack to keep the project on track because I cared. I cared about the work, the people, the outcomes. They cared about budget lines. I thought about Marla's parting smile, that shiny HR script, and her performative decency as she shoved me into financial limbo and called it a favor. And I thought, no, not this time, not quietly. By morning, I had drafted a clean, detailed summary of my job duties, titles, benefits received, and reporting structure. No rage, no fluff, just facts. I didn't send it anywhere, not yet, but it was ready. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an imposter. I felt like leverage. Filing the form felt like tossing a penny into a black hole and hoping for a splash. The state tax board's anonymous tip portal looked like it hadn't been updated since Netscape. Grainy logo, a drop-down that asked nature of violation, with options like payroll and general concern. I selected payroll, uploaded a few PDFs, nothing too aggressive, just a taste, and typed up a clinical, polite message. I believe this company may be misclassifying full-time workers as independent contractors while offering benefits and assigning them managerial responsibilities. No names, no fire, just enough truth to get a pulse. I clicked submit, got a generic thank you for your submission screen and nothing else. No confirmation email, no tracking number, just a quiet vacuum where outrage goes to die. The next morning, I regretted it. Had I overreacted? Misread the rules? Maybe the benefits were technically legal under some clause. Maybe there was fine print I missed. Kendra had sounded certain, but lawyers always sound certain. That's their whole SH stick. I opened the favor received folder again and scrolled through it like a scrapbook of betrayal. There were the screenshots, the bonus emails, the org charts, the 401k statement with the company match highlighted in pink. Still, doubt crept in like a draft through a cracked window. 2 weeks passed. Then 3, radio silence. In that void, your brain starts running wild. I imagine some state employee with a bad haircut and 1,000 open cases just deleting mine. Or worse, reading it and shrugging. I imagine my old HR director, Marla, sipping wine on a patio, chuckling over my name like it was a punchline at a compliance seminar. Then, LinkedIn kicked me in the teeth. Jason, the same manager who once said I was the glue holding this department together, posted a photo from a leadership happy hour. He was holding a beer, grinning under a banner that read Q1 Efficiencies Celebration. His caption, tough calls lead to leaner wins. Proud of the team for pushing through difficult restructuring to build a more agile org. More agile. That word again. Like I was dead weight. A tumor cut from the body to make room for new growth. I clicked through the comments. Great leadership. Way to make the hard decisions. Cheers to smarter scaling. And then there it was. A photo I wasn't supposed to see. One of my old teammates had tagged me by mistake. A group selfie from the launch I spearheaded last year. My face was blurred like I wasn't even real. Like I'd been ghosted right out of the company's history. I closed the app and stared at the wall. Maybe I had made it all bigger than it was. Maybe this was just how the game worked. Squeeze the juice out of people, toss the rind, and call it innovation. After all, I'd stayed. I'd agreed to the contractor label. I'd cashed every check. But then I thought about the time I helped that junior engineer when her mother died. I ran her tasks for 2 weeks without asking for credit. I thought about the Christmas when I delivered emergency laptops to 3 team members during a snowstorm because our ops guy had COVID and no one else stepped up. I thought about the midnight deploys, the weekend QA sessions, the wedding I missed because Jason said we couldn't delay the go-live. And I thought about how no one, not a single person, had called to check in. No text. No how are you doing? Not even a canned farewell email from HR. They'd taken everything I gave, then deleted me like a temp password. So I waited. I stopped refreshing my inbox. I stopped replaying conversations. I stopped doubting the knot in my gut that told me I wasn't crazy. I was just finally done pretending this was okay. I didn't submit anything else to the tax board. I didn't need to. I'd said what I came to say. Now I just watched and waited for the splash. The text came at 2:13 p.m. on a Wednesday, between an overdue bill notification and a discount code for almond milk I didn't ask for. Brandon Work. Hey, did you get a weird call from a state investigator? I stared at the screen. Weird call, state investigator. My pulse didn't spike, it didn't even flinch. Just a quiet, bone-deep stillness, like hearing a far-off rumble and knowing it's thunder and not a truck. I typed back, not yet. Why? He replied with a screenshot of a voicemail transcript. Something about employment status clarification and document verification. The number traced back to a state compliance office. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new tab and logged into LinkedIn. First thing I noticed, Jenna, the HR assistant who used to bungle calendar invites and once called me department glue in a team card, had updated her job title to seeking new opportunities. No announcement, no post, just a silent little edit made in the middle of the day. Second thing I noticed, 2 ex-contractors I vaguely remembered from the marketing side were suddenly active again, liking posts from labor law nonprofits and resharing articles with titles like worker misclassification, a time bomb for employers. The system had started grinding, not loudly, not yet, but I could hear the early gears chewing through paper, legality, and the smell of corporate cologne. 2 days later, I got the email. It came from a generic address, state inquiries at xxxxgov with a polite subject line, follow up regarding submitted inquiry. The body was just as measured. Dear submitter, we are following up regarding your recent submission to the State Tax Board. To proceed with preliminary review, we kindly request the following documentation if available. Initial employment agreement, evidence of benefits enrollment, payroll or compensation records, communication logs indicating managerial responsibilities. All materials will be treated confidentially in accordance with state whistleblower protocols. No names, no thank you, just a request. I didn't hesitate. I opened the favor received folder, zipped everything clean, and attached it with a brief note. Please find the requested documents attached. Let me know if you need anything further. Click, send. I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window. A mail truck stopped at the curb. The driver scratched his chin, yawned, and moved on. Somewhere a dog barked. Somewhere else a compliance officer opened my file and started to connect dots. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel righteous. I felt precise, like a scalpel. The next morning I got a call from a blocked number. I didn't pick up. They didn't leave a message. But something told me it wasn't a spammer offering me a timeshare. Something told me someone in some office somewhere had just realized that their internal documentation no longer matched their tax filings and that their problems had a name. Over the next week, more whispers bubbled up. A former IT guy I barely knew messaged me asking if I'd heard anything about contractor reclassification. I told him I hadn't. He said someone from legal had reached out asking about his timekeeping logs and who he reported to. Weird stuff, he added. Kinda makes me nervous. I didn't respond because it wasn't my job to explain. I was just a contractor, remember? No more meetings, no more quick asks, no more Slack messages asking for one last fix before launch. I'd done my part. Now the machine was moving, and all I had to do was stay out of its way. 3 weeks after I sent the file, I got a call from an unknown number with a southern area code. I let it ring out. They tried again 5 minutes later, and again the next day. Then came an email, this time from a corporate legal address I hadn't seen before, politely asking if I'd be open to a confidential conversation regarding your time at the company. No subject line, no signature block, just a vague invitation dipped in lawyer cologne. I didn't reply, but I knew what was happening. By the end of that week, I got texts from 3 different people I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Cassie, ex-copywriter. Hey, did you hear they're offering hush money to former contractors? I got a call. They're saying consulting fee, but it feels sketchy. Mardes, old dev lead. Legal reached out to me asking for my NDA again. I never signed one. Elite contract recruiter? Any idea what's going on? They said they're clarifying relationships. Sounds like a panic in slow motion. I just stared at the messages, calm as a still lake hiding 1,000 piranhas. Then Jenna, the former HR assistant turned LinkedIn job seeker, finally broke silence. She DM'd me. Jenna, you didn't hear this from me, but there's an actual audit. State level, legal's freaking. Preliminary findings are bad. That was her word, bad. Not concerning or complex or sensitive. Just bad. She followed it with, Marla's been in closed-door meetings all week. Our hiring freeze just became a total lock. They told recruiting to stand down until compliance clears. And sure enough, 3 days later, it hit the trades. A small headline buried in the business section. Tech firm halts hiring amid internal compliance review. The statement was corporate oatmeal. In response to routine internal controls, the company is temporarily pausing new hiring efforts while addressing structural alignment related to labor classifications. Routine internal controls. Right. I read that sentence twice, once with coffee and once with vodka. It tasted the same either way, desperate. I kept watching. Quietly. On Glassdoor, a fresh review popped up from former contractor project coordinator who warned others to get it in writing. Don't trust verbal titles. Use you and drop you when convenient. Within 24 hours, another post surfaced about being forced to act as team lead without benefits. Then another. Then a Reddit thread surfaced in r/consulting, where someone anonymously posted, my last company treated contractors like full-time employees but without the legal paperwork. Now they're getting audited. Anyone been through this? People started connecting the dots. And still, I said nothing. I didn't need to. My absence was louder than anything I could post. They couldn't spin it away or bury it in a culture memo. I wasn't protesting. I was the receipt. Jason, my old manager, hadn't posted on LinkedIn in over a week. His usual leadership quotes and hustle gifs had gone dry. His silence was delicious. I'd sit on my patio in the evenings, watching the sun die slowly over the tree line, sipping chamomile like it was champagne. Every ding from my phone made my heart flicker, not with anxiety but anticipation. Because now I wasn't waiting for response, I was waiting for collapse. The house they built on loopholes was starting to sink, and every email they sent, every NDA they scrambled to sign, every call they made to someone like Cassie or Mardes, or Illy was just more frantic patchwork on a hull that had already cracked. I never gloated, never posted a thing. I didn't need applause. This wasn't revenge. This was arithmetic. What they owed finally adding up. It came in a nondescript envelope, cream-colored and slightly smudged, like it had taken the long route through a bureaucracy that still used fax machines and rubber stamps. The return address was printed in small black letters, State Department of Tax and Wage Compliance. I slid it open with the same steak knife I used to open everything these days: bills, grocery coupons, silent little justice bombs. Inside, a single-page letter, formal and bloodless. Dear Submitter, thank you for your materials regarding potential misclassification under State Labor Code Section 112.9b. Based on preliminary findings, the board has authorized a formal investigation into the employment practices of company name redacted. You may be contacted again should further details be required. If you believe you may be eligible for whistleblower protections or compensation as a misclassified employee, please refer to the enclosed guidance for next steps. Enclosed was a folded blue pamphlet with bold letters: Know your rights under whistleblower law. I stared at it for a full minute, unmoving. Not because I was shocked, but because this was the moment the rope snapped tight around their ankles, and they hadn't even realized they were hanging upside down yet. I forwarded the letter to Kendra, my lawyer friend, with a short note. It begins. She replied in less than an hour. This is real, Nina. You could be eligible for back pay, damages, possibly legal fees. Want to talk strategy? I didn't reply right away. I just sat with it. Let the magnitude settle like dust after demolition. For 6 years, I lived inside their fiction. I played the role, ate the cake, smiled in the Zooms. I was efficient, respected, invisible. Now, with a single folder of documents and a handful of receipts, I'd tilted their entire house off its axis. And the best part? I wasn't even doing anything anymore. The engine was running without me. They were the ones sweating through audits and emails. I was just keeping records. Later that evening, I opened a blank document, my resume. It had been collecting digital cobwebs in a forgotten folder named Someday. I updated my title from independent consultant to Project Leadership Cross-Functional Operations, Fortune 500 clients. I added a bullet. Successfully led multi-year initiatives across engineering, product, and compliance during high-growth periods. And another, experience navigating complex classification environments and cross-jurisdictional labor relationships. That one made me laugh. I listed references, real ones, people who'd actually reported to me, people who still called for advice, people who knew the truth behind the label. Then I hit save. No posts, no announcements, no excited to share, updates with balloon emojis, just the click of quiet readiness. I'd spent years giving that company everything: late nights, strategic plans, emotional labor, literal sweat. I'd given them loyalty without protection. Now, finally, I had both. The best part, they still didn't see me coming. I was no longer the good soldier. I was the loose end they forgot to snip. The dotted line that led back to a file folder no one double-checked. They built their walls high, thinking no one would look behind the drywall, but I was in the beams. And now the inspectors had arrived with clipboards and flashlights, and the foundation was buckling under their own shortcuts. I didn't need revenge. I had receipts. I didn't need justice. I had leverage. And I didn't need a job title anymore. Because I had become the one thing they never accounted for. A woman who knows exactly where all the bodies are buried, because she was the one they asked to dig the holes. The email came on a Tuesday, like most gutless things do. Subject line: request for clarification, former engagement sent from someone in legal I'd never met, with a title so vague it probably required its own NDA. The message was polished to a dull, professional shine. Hi, Miss Castillo. We're currently working with state compliance officers to ensure accuracy in our internal documentation regarding contractor roles. As you were a key contributor during your time with us, we'd greatly appreciate your assistance in clarifying a few points related to your engagement. Specifically, we'd like to understand the nature of your day-to-day responsibilities to help avoid any misrepresentation during the audit process. You'd be open to arranging a small consulting fee for your time, of course. Please let us know your availability, of course. I read it twice, then again, just to admire the desperation carefully dressed in civility. Clarify your role, avoid misrepresentation, small consulting fee. They didn't even have the spine to call it what it was: damage control. They weren't just asking for my help, they were trying to buy my silence in case I ended up deposed or subpoenaed. The irony? The more they said, the deeper they buried themselves. Every word was an admission that they knew I hadn't been just a contractor. They were trying to retroactively twist my reality into their narrative, to backdate the truth like an old invoice they didn't want on the books. I clicked reply, took a breath, and typed, "Hi, I'd love to help, but as a contractor, that kind of administrative clarity work wasn't part of my scope. Hope the documents speak for themselves. Best, Nina." No signature, no phone number, no winks, no threats, no subtext. I hit send. I leaned back and let the silence settle in. It wasn't a power move, it was a mirror. I held it up and let them stare into it, because nothing cuts like being politely reminded of your own lies. They wanted me to mop up the mess they made with the title they used to underpay me. They wanted me to pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen. that I hadn't trained managers, led launches, sat in strategic planning sessions, and signed off on timelines they didn't even understand. But they'd put me in the basement and handed me the blueprints. Now they were surprised I remembered how the walls were built. A few days later, I got another message. Shorter this time, we understand. Thank you for your time, no consulting fee, no follow-up. I imagined their meetings, the sweaty conference calls, the whiteboard scribbles, hushed internal memos with my name underlined. I pictured Marla pinching the bridge of her nose while legal asked whether anyone had a copy of my responsibilities in writing. Spoiler, they didn't, because HR doesn't write down what it wants to forget. Meanwhile, I updated nothing, posted nothing, said nothing. But I knew they knew now, knew who I really was. Not just a name on a spreadsheet, not a redacted line on a terminated contract, but the fulcrum they never noticed until the weight collapsed. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice, not once. The headline hit at 9:07 a.m. Pacific time, but the shockwaves started long before that. State levies $2.5 million penalty against tech firm for contractor misclassification. Class action suit filed by former workers beneath it. A subheading that read like the closing argument of a trial I never attended. Whistleblower documentation exposes pattern of willful misclassification spanning 6 years. I read it twice then again, just to savor the sentence structure. It had that rare balance of fact and consequence, clinical, clean, and fatal, the way all good autopsies are written. Inside the article, the state had concluded their audit. More than 30 individuals had been misclassified. Benefits had been given without proper employee classification, violating multiple sections of labor code and tax law. HR's internal labeling system had been deemed intentionally misleading. A class action suit had been filed within hours of the state's ruling. And there, buried halfway through the third paragraph, in the language of bureaucratic bullets and court-friendly euphemisms, it said, the investigation was triggered by a detailed submission provided by a former contract project lead whose documentation of internal structures, benefit enrollment, and managerial roles proved pivotal in the board's decision to pursue penalties. No name, just a ghost in the machine, but everyone inside that company knew exactly who it was. That same morning, a statement from the company's CEO went live on their LinkedIn. We take compliance matters seriously. We are reviewing internal policies and have placed HR leadership on administrative leave pending the outcome of our own investigation. Translation, Marla's gone, and they just lit their own office on fire trying to keep the curtains clean. I didn't celebrate, I didn't pour champagne, I didn't tweet some poetic clapback about justice or karma or finding your voice. I was already somewhere else. The beach wasn't even that fancy, public, unassuming, the kind of spot where locals bring folding chairs and homemade iced tea in plastic jugs. My feet were in the sand. My phone was at 12%. The sun was slicing the sky like it was trying to apologize for the last 6 years. I refreshed the headline one more time, just to make sure it was real. Still there, still beautiful. Then I opened my camera app, took a photo of the ocean, and set it as my new home screen. I didn't want to forget the moment. Not because of the downfall, but because of the quiet that followed. The kind of quiet that comes after a long, hard rain, when the roof didn't cave in because you finally stopped patching holes and walked away. A little girl ran past with a kite. A man coughed nearby. Seagulls bickered over something that looked like an old French fry. I looked at the screen again, at the headline, at my reflection in the glass, at the version of myself I'd carried through that entire mess, silent, calculating, patient, underpaid, underestimated, and now finally unbothered. And I said it out loud just once, to no one in particular. Best $2,500 favor I've ever received. Then I tossed the phone into my bag, leaned back in my chair, and let the world spin without me. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.